We deal in paint, pigment, light and shadow, realism, surrealism, impressionism, and ghost stories.
An interest in the oddball, a predilection toward the bizarre. And this place is nothing if it isn't bizarre.
There's no admission, no requirement of membership, only a strong and abiding belief in the dark at the top of the stairs, or things that go bump in the night. The name of this place, should you have come in here accidentally out of the rain, is the Night Gallery.
You guys are just fans of Clint Howard.
Fuck yeah, we are. God damn it.
Who isn't?
You're going to hear a lot about that.
Oh, yeah, Clint Howard's great.
Clint
Holy
Howard,
shit.
as Chris just mentioned, is featured here in our Viewing the Night Gallery podcast we're doing here. This year, this episode marks a moment where the Night Gallery is under new management, and I'm actually really happy about that. I'm Father Malone. Joining me here in the gallery, as always, are the podcast of Power's own Chris Stachiw.
Yes, I'm here and ready to talk about the Twilight Zone's adjacent Night Gallery.
Listen, you leave that Twilight Zone stuff back in the last season, friend.
Oh, I'm right. Sorry, I forgot. Rod Serling's no longer involved with Rod Serling's Night Gallery.
Also joining us straight from Rankin on Bass is Mr. Mike White.
I so wanted to do Clint Howard's laugh from Star Trek, but I'm going to avoid doing that.
No, do it when we're talking about the segment.
Oh, okay, we'll do.
This is season 2, episode 1 we're discussing, which aired on September 5th, 1971, making this 52 years old just a couple of days ago. We get, in addition to the opening credits here in the season 2, that's Mike Road introducing all of the guest stars for some weird reason.
Wow, yeah, so strange.
On this very special episode of Night Gallery.
But that's
Clint
Howard,
Howard, William Wyndham, and more. Like, what? You know what it reminded me of? Unfunny Naked Gun. I mean, that's the only show that I can think of where it's like, on tonight's episode, a very special guest. Yeah, exactly.
It's a sea change here at Night Gallery. Now, at this particular episode was broken into 4 segments. The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes, Miss Lovecraft Sent Me, The Hand of Borgus, and Phantom of a What Opera. As I mentioned, I just want to give a brief history of the new showrunner here. This was the producer of last season's episodes. Yeah, he produced the entirety of last season. He's now asserted a bit of creative control. This man is named Jack Laird. He was a child actor. He couldn't be more different than Rod Serling. He grew up in Monrovia, California. His mother taught theater. His father was a physicist or something. He was a child actor, was a pilot during the war, came back and acted primarily on television through the 40s. And then he kind of fell into writing and producing. By the time that The Twilight Zone came on the air in 1959, Jack Laird had written episodes of over 40 different television series. That's a staggering amount in like 8 or 9 years. 40 different series. I wasn't even aware that there were that many series on the air at the time. But anyway, his big success, Laird's success in television, really came in 1964 when he started Ben Casey. He ran that show for 3 or 4 or 5 years. At the same time, he was producing a number of feature films, most of them starring Leslie Nielsen, who shows up in this episode. And most of them were written by a fellow named Alvin Sapensley, who also shows up in this episode. And once Night Gallery folded, Jack Laird went off and created Kojak, or didn't create it, but that was his show. He produced that for the entire thing. So anyway, that's who we're dealing with, a guy who actually seems interested in horror, as opposed to Mr. Serling. And this is his first offering. Now, the first episode, or the first segment of this episode, is called The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes.
Tonight's first painting. Small boy encased in a crystal ball, born with a very special gift. He can prophesy. But you'll wonder, as we look behind that picture, if a prophecy is always a gift, or can it on occasion take the form of a nightmare. The painting's title is The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes.
This was written by Rod Serling, based on a short story by Margaret St. Clair, and directed by John Badham, or John M. Badham here, which he's a big-time filmmaker. You all know who he is. He ended up doing 6 episodes of Night Gallery. He had that kind of a weird career where he was a television director, became a feature director, and then ended up back on television, which I think is where he is today. Yeah. This one stars Clint Howard, Michael Constantine, Bernie Capel, Ellen Weston, and Rance Howard for 2 seconds as a cameraman named Rance. And I would be remiss. Episode also has special appearances by Bela Lugosi and Charles Lawton in a scene from Island of Lost Souls, which comes in the middle and is really shocking and scary and doesn't feel out of place and doesn't make me think I want to go watch that instead. How about you, Mike? What did you think of this one?
I really enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun. I'm just amazed so this is September 15th, 1971. This comes out. We just saw Clint Howard, a couple years prior, drinking Tranya and having laughs with Captain Kirk. And then just a few years after this, he's going to be this shit-eating, the guy with the custom van, running the entire rock and roll high school and selling favors. When does puberty hit this guy? Like, just in that little tiny window, he just
overnight, baby.
Yeah.
It feels like overnight because, like,
Wow.
I was not expecting to see this young of a Clint Howard. Like, he's still a child.
Yeah, he looks super young in this, and yeah.
You're absolutely right, Mike. We're talking about an 8-year period. Now, that's a long time growing up, but not what we next see him in. I mean, he does stuff in between, but like, you're right. Like, rock and roll high school, that's a man.
Yes.
And this is a child. Like, there's no in between with
It's
this
a
guy.
small child, too. Like, he's like, his feet don't touch the ground type thing. He's shopping in the kiddie section of Sears buying his little suit that he's wearing.
Which is ill-fitting, by the way.
Yes.
It really bothered me. He looked like David Byrne.
Kids in suits, man. Like, kids in suits just
kind of creepy.
Either they're ill-fitting or they look like Damien from The Omen. And you know what they say, do what you want, but don't forget The Omen.
I'm a recent devotee to that number.
Yeah, right?
I know that's a meme, but I'm not.
It's a weird song that I randomly brought up on an episode of Kulturecast that we did, but Father Malone and Heather did not believe that it was a real thing until I played it for them.
It is a real song, evidently. And do what you want, but don't forget The Omen.
It's a dance track, baby.
Because I saw a headline that referenced that today, and I'm just like, what?
Oh my God, really?
The Omen?
Are people
I hope it takes
forgetting
over.
The Omen? Yeah.
Have you forgotten the Antichrist? I don't know how you could.
Maybe that song was a warning. I called on.
Yeah.
Don't forget The Omen. Really, it's coming.
I really appreciate the cast in this. I love, Bernie Copel, not in here nearly enough, but Michael Constantine, I don't think people sing his praise as much as maybe they should. Of course, he's a little bit, let's say, extra when he's talking about the kid and how terrible this is and yada, 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 just really lays it on thick. But, we're getting his character. And yeah, I appreciated where this story went, and I really appreciated the twist at the end. And it's so nice to have a twist that actually kind of makes sense.
Makes sense and plays in.
And it really sucks, too. Because it's like the worst kind of twist. The character is saddled. I mean, it's the old problem of being the person who can see into the future, right? Like at some point, that stops being a thing you can see past, and who knows when that will be. Cassandra, it's that kind of same story, and I like it. I mean, it's really good, but the fucking twist is pretty brutal. It's pretty
brutal.
Not as bad as the sound design, but otherwise. Rabble.
A lot of theremin and weirdo sort of kind of like sci-fi sounds, which are absolutely not necessary there at the end. Like Badham throws this like red process over all of the shots past the prediction that we haven't discovered yet, and we absolutely did not need it. The revelation is going to be powerful enough once the kid reveals it. Other things I did not like, Grandpa's speech with the UCLA thing. It's just like Serling just can't help. He has to tell us exactly what he wants us to know, and it's just terrible expositional
in
stuff.
no uncertain terms, as they would say.
Yeah, I wish that was out of this episode entirely. Also, missing girl Gwendolyn Fox. Early in the episode, young Herbie makes a prediction that a girl is going to be found who's been lost out in the mountains. And sure enough, 15 minutes later, they do find her. She's basically sitting in the middle of a road, like the most traveled road I've ever seen. Was she really that lost, or was anyone even looking for her? Because that didn't make much sense to me. And weirdly, the helicopter pilot was Mike Road, the voice of on tonight's episode.
Wow.
William Wyndham. So that took me out of it. But maybe that's just because I deal too much in sound or something.
It's because you knew.
Chris, speaking of Clint Howard, now early in the episode, it's basically in his introductory scene, I wrote in my notebook, I fucking love Clint Howard. And then I underlined it every time I thought that. I ended up with 7 underlines. So that's 7 times, actually 8, because I wrote it once. That's 8 times in 22 minutes where I was like, this kid is fucking awesome. And he is. That breed of child actor is so rare, where he doesn't come off as precocious. He comes off as understanding every concept that's coming out of his mouth. It's a little adult. Maybe that's it. Maybe he's got that orphan syndrome or something. Maybe he's already 23 here and like we just don't know it yet. But like he startles me every time I see him. And he continues to startle me. Clint Howard is great. Like, where's his big starring role? Would somebody just give it to him already? Come on.
Yeah. I mean, is Darren Aronofsky gonna do for him like he just did for Brendan Fraser and Mickey Rourke a few decades ago? It's like, come on. Yeah. Tarantino used to do that. Come on.
Yeah, this guy's more worthy than them. He was on the Enterprise.
Exactly.
I think it's interesting because both Ron and Clint Howard were very good child actors.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which is like doubly as rare because normally you get one out of a family, but both of them.
Right.
And then both of them immensely talented, both still working in the industry. One as a Oscar-winning, multi-nominated director, and then another one as he has a fucking credit list as long as my arm. I mean, Clint Howard's credit list has got to be over double digits, probably closer to triple digits.
He's the modern Dick Miller, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Both of those guys. I'm always happy to see them. They never give a bad performance, and I wish they had more success.
Hey, Clint Howard was in one of my favorite comedies. He was in Little Nicky putting wax on his nipples. I mean, again, like what
if that ain't success, folks?
The range. I'm just talking about the range alone and the willingness to work on weird things. Because he's in a ton of Adam Sandler's late 90s stuff. He's in Waterboy.
That's true.
He's in Little Nicky. Again, like I think he's probably in Big Daddy or Mr. Deeds. Like, again, like the range to go from Star Trek as a child actor to this, to that, he works with Rob Zombie recently. I mean, he's worked with like everybody at this point.
In other words, we love Clint Howard.
Yeah.
100% agreed.
And I really like this segment a lot. I remember seeing this way too young and being absolutely fucking haunted by this ending. For me, Night Gallery kind of begins in season 2. Like, this is the kind of offering I'm talking about. And I know Serling wrote this, but it's an adaptation, which he was always best in speculative fiction when he was adapting something. And the story is a fucking corker. There was evidently a short film made in 2018 in Mexico called The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes, which I was not able to get my hands on, but I really want to. It is like a gut punch of a story, and it makes sense, and I don't know. I really loved it.
I know the way the story ends. So we kind of haven't talked about the twist. We've kind of mentioned how brutal it is, but the twist is he doesn't want to predict the future for the next day because the next day the world ends. Which is just like, again, like that's the whole debacle, the dilemma of being able to see the future is there are people who can see the future in many ways, but I think everybody who can see the future probably knows that at some point they will stop being able to see the future.
And what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. And what does that mean?
Either their death or everyone's, right?
Right. So again, like that's an interesting direction to go. Father Malone, you and I earlier this year on Scary Stories We Tell talked about Nostradamus. I mean, this feeds directly into that. That's that same prognostication, sightseeing, seeing into the future, whether or not it's real or not. Because we're never told whether or not the world ends the next day either, which I think is even the better part of this episode. It's left open at the end. It just focuses in on that shot of the sun because it's going to be a solar flare, and that's it. But like, I'm glad that they don't show it getting, destroyed or show everybody dying. Like you don't know what happens. Who knows?
See, I was waiting for a twist, but I thought it might have come from, because I like that they set up the rules of what he can know and what he doesn't know. He knows about the missing girl because he heard the news story. He knows about this because he read it in a book. So he knew what a tsunami was or whatever. And it was just like, okay. So like, I was waiting for him to read about something that he didn't know about and be like, oh, that's what that is. And then suddenly be like, Holocaust 2.0 happening next week. Something like that. I didn't mind the way that this went. And you could be like, well, he read about that in a science book because he is trying to think of the word nova. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But yeah, I was expecting a twist, but I wasn't expecting something as brutal as this.
No. The only thing about the ending that bothered me is that when we first meet him, which is presumably months, if not a year ago, in his screen test, he's talking about astronomy specifically, and the kid is so bright that there's no way he didn't know what a nova or a supernova was by then. You know what I mean? I just wish they hadn't mentioned astronomy at all in the opening, because to me it would have made sense. Because as soon as he started saying, "What's the word?" I'm like, you know what the word is, kid. This kid would know the word.
Right. Yeah.
Agreed. I agree 100%. It's great, but I think the ending, I think it just missed, I don't know, like it's good, but I feel like you're right. Like not giving it away so early would have been a benefit.
They had already stacked the deck kind of with where he tells her the rules, which I agree with you, Mike. I like when they give me at least some parameters to bounce off of here. And it reminded me actually of a new Twilight Zone 85, the Toys of Caliban, the George R.R. Martin story, where that kid, he could make something happen if he saw it, like that same sort of psychic connection.
It's a pretty good way to start the first season sans Rod Serling. That's for sure.
Yeah. I was like, where have you been all my life? This is what I was hoping for with this show.
Yeah. And this is written by Rod Serling too. Like, holy shit.
He's well aware at this point, this is no longer his show, right? He's submitting scripts just like everybody else. He's actually getting scripts rejected, and others he's getting notes on. So it's got to be pretty humiliating, right? Rod, why didn't you this is a story you knew you were going to adapt. Why didn't you put it in the last season? It might have helped.
For real.
Now, every time he redeems himself from here on out, I'm just going to think, God, why, man? Why didn't you let this happen? Because you're capable of better. And it's right here.
And that is like, that's now like a thing that I've been thinking about is like, why, if every episode in this season is good that he's written, because these were lying around. There's no way he like wrote these in the in-between interim time. Like,
right.
This story had to have been sitting on his desk and waiting to be adapted.
Oh, 100%.
He's like, oh, I'll wait till next season. Next season, I'm going to really, really give it to them. Like, dude, the bus has left the station.
Yeah. Without you on it at this point.
They still should have taken his name off. But anyway. All right. On to our next segment. This is basically a blackout sketch. I don't know if there's any other way to describe it. It's called Miss Lovecraft Sent Me. This one was written by producer Jack Laird, directed by Gene R. Kearney. He would end up directing 7 segments on Night Gallery, most of them just blackout sketches like this one. He also wrote Night of the Lepus, that giant bunny movie.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, he wrote that. And back in 1964, he made a short called Silent Snow, Secret Snow, which actually ends up as an episode of Night Gallery. Further along, he remakes it and Orson Welles ends up narrating. It's pretty good. But Miss Lovecraft Sent Me stars Joseph Campanella, who we already saw last season on Night Gallery, Sue Lyon, Lolita herself. And look, it's like I said, this is a blackout sketch. It's a babysitter gets sent to basically Dracula's house to babysit his kid. There's nothing to it.
And doesn't know it's Dracula's house. It's so charming and quaint, and it was over in a heart.
Was his son supposed to be a werewolf?
Something that walked on 4 legs, because it's like, put this chain on, and this chain on, and then this chain on. It's like, oh, I'm out of here. Like,
yeah, it was over fast. Yeah, I liked Joseph Campanella as the Dracula character and just that kind of dime store look that he was rocking. I mean, this was, he might have come in like 2nd or 3rd place at the Halloween costume contest.
3rd.
Yeah.
Hey, Children's Zoo worked for this exact reason.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I can't be mad at this thing. It just sort of shows up. No. It's a dumb joke. It's basically like a Playboy magazine joke. Like Gay and Wilson would have written something like this. Like, it was just a word balloon in the next room.
Nothing wrong with that at all. Like, this is okay, because we haven't gotten anything like this yet in the show.
No, and that's what I really actually like about this. It's nothing much. It's actually kind of dumb. But the fact that he opens the door and Sue Lyon walks in with a transistor radio on, and suddenly it feels like 1971 was startling.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the part that works the best, is it's clearly set in 71. And so it's like, there's that weird, like, just like people out of place. Like, why would you go to this house to begin with? On top of the fact that Miss Lovecraft sent you. Miss Lovecraft sent you? That name doesn't sound weird to you, even if you don't know who H.P. Lovecraft is? I wouldn't go to anybody's house whose last name is Lovecraft.
No, she works for Miss Lovecraft.
I know, but I wouldn't take orders from people named Lovecraft, wouldn't go to their house, wouldn't interact with them. You know what I mean? Like, if you're in a fictional story, like, it's funny. Miss Lovecraft sent me. She sure did.
What I love is that she shows up. It's clearly Dracula.
Like, yeah, it was like, Not even it's not like it's Chris Sarandon in Fright Night.
Yeah.
It's a dude in white face makeup. Like
Dracula lets her into a castle.
Right.
clearly in the suburbs of like Willamette or something, like in Illinois.
He's looking at the books. The books are all like horrifying nightmare titles.
Right.
Like, and it's still not processing. It has to be after the fourth leg goes into the chain. By the way, one chain was like, what?
Yeah.
It wasn't even that she couldn't see his reflection in the mirror.
Yeah. Oh my God. Right.
What a party trick that is. Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Because that's a hell of a party trick. I mean, it's like you said, it's like a Playboy joke. It's stupid, and don't think too long about it. Because the moment you start thinking about how dumb it is when you realize how really idiotic it is.
Serling, in one of those lectures that I said, specifically was commenting about Night Gallery while it was on the air. In fact, the speech I saw him give was before the premiere of the second season, when already they had taken it away. In that situation, he was saying the show no longer works because you can't slap comedy up against horror. In his mind, what he specifically said was, you can't do Edgar Allan Poe and then have 34 seconds of Flip Wilson and contain any consistency, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Genre purist Rod Serling.
Right.
If in the middle of Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes, there was this sketch, this Miss Lovecraft sent me, then he would have a point. But he told his story and it's done. This is a stupid aperitif. It's just like an amuse-bouche. And now we're on to another story. Jack Laird is doing the series a favor by putting these in. Even if it's dumb, even if it's whatever, like, it just shakes you up a little bit and gets you on to the next thing. And I think that's really necessary in horror.
For those of you that couldn't see the subtitles when Father Malone said amuse-bouche, he's talking about a palate cleanser.
Some watermelon sorbet.
Yeah. A fine citrus gelée.
Exactly what I meant. But in monster form.
This is exactly what this is in the 1985 show. I mean, I mentioned Children's Zoo. Like, that was the exact same thing there. This is the first time the show's broken up into 4 segments.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a big segment, a small segment, a big smegma. Jesus. Smegments. 2 big segments and 2 small segments. And that works. It breaks up the show. It actually, like, but not even talking about what we're talking about specifically, that format, I think, works in the show's favor.
100%. It's like Mad Magazine with the little cartoons in the margins, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's as impactful as that. Like, it doesn't take anything away from the rest of this show.
No,
like
and it didn't in 1985 either.
No, the A and the B story in each of these episodes ought to be strong enough that they don't need this, but like it's good that they're there because this is an anthology series and it's catch as can as far as quality, no matter how good the show is.
And Children's Zoo has stuck with me since we watched it.
It was solid.
And same with the Eye of Newton, another quick, breezy little segment. One of the better segments from that entire show with our friend from the Barney Miller show, Mr. Ron Glass.
Damn straight. So good.
Did you guys notice, not this episode, the previous one, the UCLA professor who comes to visit Clint Howard? That was Ellen Weston. She was in Kolchak. She was on the Devil's Platform.
Oh, is that the Tom Skerritt episode?
Yeah.
Where he becomes a dog at the end?
Yes.
Yeah. Apparently becomes a dog at the end.
Maybe,
so they say. Yeah, who knows?
The concept of medical transplants is exciting indeed. But the story behind this painting takes the concept a step further, or if you will, a step over, into a different kind of world. One in which a gentleman named Lackland finds a hand that is not his own, and he finds it at the end of his wrist. Our painting, The Hand of Burgess Weems.
This one was written by Al Sapinsley. I mentioned earlier that he wrote most of Jack Laird's movies. He also ended up writing 5 Night Galleries. He also worked in the same spheres as Serling early on in television. He did a lot of Philco theater and Chrysler theater. Unlike Serling, he actually leaned towards science fiction, like Tales of Tomorrow and those kind of series. It was mainly tense, murdery, or wacky science fiction with this guy, and that continues here. He's adapting a short story, The Other Hand, by George Langland, who's the creator of The Fly.
All right, I was about to say, that name sounds awfully familiar.
Yeah, and directed by Gene R. Kearney. Gene R. Kearney was also the one who directed the last segment we watched. This one is about a man. Oh, actually, it stars George Maharis, Ray Milland, and Patricia Donahoe, and it tells the tale of a man his hand is no longer his own. And it's not a nice hand, this new hand. Mike, what'd you think of this one?
I mean, the idea of the possessed hand. I mean, how long have we had that? I mean, even before Hands of Warlock, I'm sure that that was a trope way back in the day, and probably since horror stories were being written. And of course, we've seen it played out in a lot of different ways. Things like Idle Hands, the amazing hand sequence from Evil Dead 2.
Right.
So many good things.
The Hand with Michael Caine.
The idea of the close-ups of the hand, it gets a little rote after a while, but goddamn did I enjoy this segment, especially that we were jumping back and forth in time so many times. I thought they were going to do it once, and then they ended up doing it again, and I was just like, wow, this is actually a very well put together segment to tell a pretty rote story, but I enjoyed it quite a bit.
How about you, Chris?
I like the name Burgess Weems.
Damn straight.
Borgus. I think that's the name of my first child. Borgus. Borgus Stachiw. No, I think you're right. It's about as rote can be, really. Like, this is, again, like, this is a time honored story, time honored horror story from time immemorial. Like, Evil Dead is the most famous one, but this is pretty good, which is weird to be saying because this show has not been good for a while.
Yes, I know. I kept waiting for it to shit the bed. I
Right.
was just like, come on, you gonna screw this up somehow?
I feel like the ending is kind of dinky.
It's expected.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's fine. Other than the kind of cheese ball ending, it's fun.
Yeah, this is the journey, not the destination kind of story.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it is the way that they, as you pointed out, Mike, the way they tell the story, which is fractured time jumping back and forth. People aren't willing to do that in a feature film, never mind a 22 segment thing of a television series.
Right.
What's funny is while watching this, I went and looked up the names of the editors for the series because I thought the editing in this one was spectacular. The opening sequence is the moment where our character, who is possessed of Borgus Weems, driving a car, nearly hitting a pedestrian. That's as simple as the sequence is, but they shot it on the back lot. Gene Kiernan very smartly shot everything in close-up, so it doesn't feel like we're back on the Universal fucking lot like every episode from the first season. And it's edited so tensely that this super simple thing becomes really tense. So I looked up the names of the editors here, and there are 2 editors listed. They're listed on every fucking episode. So it's almost impossible to determine who edited what. But in this episode, there were 2 editors, Dave Rollins and Jean J. Berthelot. Dave Rollins ends up editing most of John Badham's films. So I'm going to say that this one was edited by John J. Berthelot. And it's, again, just really the cutaway shots that you mentioned, Mike, of the hand. So they keep cutting to the guy's hand, and then it's a quick shot of a hand in red gesticulating crazily.
Yes.
And that is so effective. If they do it too much, they keep coming back to it. I don't know why. But for that scene, it is so freaky and weird and unnerving. This is an incredibly well-directed episode. Like, production overall feels like a movie, feels like a modern movie, a 1971 movie, which I really appreciated. I think the plot is bonkers, cuckoo, crazy. There is no way, and I know people who have actually attempted to have parts of their body removed. There is no way on God's green earth that you can go into a doctor's office, spill this absolutely psychotic tale, and then when he turns you down, you smash the shit out of your hand with a fucking paperweight, and then they're like, okay, now we'll do it for you. No.
I just assumed he annihilated his hand to the point of, like, they have to cut it off.
I was hoping that he would hit it over and over. And
Right,
over
which
again.
is what like I went to, which is filling in a gap that the episode didn't do, which it should have done, because then it would make sense. You wouldn't even have to try to explain it away.
The problem is the next scene is the surgery scene, and they show the hand, and there's nothing wrong with
Right,
it. It's
right.
got a little blood on it, maybe a little bit of set dressing, but it's just a hand.
Right.
And they needn't have shown the hand at all. They should have just shown the surgery, and they could have shown the scalpel going on a wrist, and we would have filled in that the hand is completely mutilated, because it would have had to be mutilated. There's no way if you just hit it, they would have just said, "You broke your hand, you dummy. Now put on this rubber outfit and get in this cell."
You're telling me that you can't just request to have limbs hacked off?
You can, but they don't let you do it.
Right. Yeah, you have to do all kinds of things. You get like your dry ice and you put your leg on there and then you just start sawing away. I mean, I'm trying to remember what documentary that was that I watched all about people with limb dysphoria. And then like 2 weeks later, there was a CSI about it. So
it can be done, and the way he does it is the stupidest way possible. He could have just, it made me think of the Vault of Horror, the Amicus film, where like a character chops his hand off, like he has a paper cutter, and it's the most dangerous looking thing, and it's real, and like you have to wind it up like a guillotine, and it drops down. Like this guy just needed to go find that thing. I'm sure there was somewhere in New York.
Well, that's my point. Like it's goofy because like he could just go and like get it cut off in any industrial accident.
Yeah, take a shotgun to it.
Yeah, blow your hand off. Like you really want it? Like just take the gun and shoot the hand a bunch of times. The gun that you had. That you were threatening your wife.
By the way, if anyone is ever struggling with themselves with a pistol and they're pointing it at you and you don't know which way it's going to go, get out of the way. That girl stood there the entire time with the gun, like basically at her head. That was weird.
Yeah.
With all this being said, this is a good episode.
By the way, that documentary is called Whole, WHOLE, by Melanie Gilbert. And I have to say, it's really haunting. So
I don't know if I want to watch a documentary about phantom. Did they talk about phantom pain in there as well?
Oh yeah, it's just like when I knew that this hand didn't belong to me and it really had to go. So,
and then when it's gone, they can still feel it sometimes. That's even fucking wilder, man.
Yeah.
But that what you're describing, Chris, like any amputee will describe, but these people are like that. What Mike just described, this hand does not belong to me. That's
yeah. Ever get high and look at your own hands too long? That's what we're talking about. But it's like you understand and believe that you can no longer in control of it.
And that's the thrust of this episode. This is why it works. I think we've all had thoughts like
The
that.
Simpsons did this with the wig, with Homer and Snake's wig in an episode.
Hell to pay.
Hell to pay. Yeah, they did this. I mean, this. I think the X-Files did it in one of their episodes or something.
What was that? There was a movie, Body Parts, with Jeff Fahey, I think, where he had the serial killer's arm or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've got the eyes of a killer.
Yeah, this is good. This is a fun story. I think it's a little maybe too serious for its own good.
Also, George Maharis, who's the lead guy in this, the entire time I had him confused with Dick Gautier, who was Jaime on Get Smart.
Yeah.
Well, George Maharis is well known for his final role in the film Doppelganger, where he plays Mike Wallace.
Oh, wow.
I don't know who Mike Wallace is. My name's Malone, Father Malone. My first name is Father.
Who is this person?
My middle name is Patrick. Father Patrick Malone, but I do know a Mike Wallace. I'm related to him. He found that troubling when he read it. Let me just say.
He personally did. I do think the way the episode ends is funny, where he's like, "Oh my god!" It's like a monster moment.
No, we haven't even mentioned Ray Milland, who was just,
I know,
just like walking gravity. That man, like I believe everything he says. He makes any outlandish situation becomes real because Ray Milland tells you it is.
Damn straight. Even when he's got when he's on Rosie Greer's shoulder.
I believed him then too.
Yes. Oh man.
All right. That brings us to the final segment. We're left with another blackout sketch. This is called Phantom of What Opera? This was written and directed by Gene R. Kearney, starring Leslie Nielsen and Mary Ann Beck. This is, you guys, I don't know. It's Phantom of the Opera and
Leslie Nielsen, though.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
I'm not bagging on it, but I'm just saying there's nothing to describe.
It's dumb with a capital D, but it's dumb fun.
Yeah, I probably enjoyed this more than the Dracula sketch. So
yeah,
the production value is better.
I mean, it looks like they filmed it. It looks like they filmed it on the Universal backlot.
Yeah.
You know where it looks like they filmed it? It looks like they filmed it where they did like the makeup and monster show.
Right.
Just like the corner of that room that everybody's looking one way. They're like, all right, Leslie, come on. All right, we're going to put you over here. Just don't film it really tight and close it.
I actually like, even if the jokes aren't landing, I like that they're kind of playing in what everyone thinks of as horror. Right. Like in 1971, if you ask somebody what constituted a horror story, they would probably say Dracula or all of the Universal stuff. So I like that these blackout sketches are playing on those a little bit. We got Dracula. Now we got Phantom of the Opera. I'm sure we're going to get others down the line. I don't think this was very funny at all. I thought the makeup was pretty good for a television series that I
didn't look like Leslie Nielsen.
No.
Sure didn't. No.
Not at all. Not at all.
His voice, but that was about it.
When I saw Serling talk, they asked him if he had any regrets about the show, and not as far as losing control, but he said in the first season they had like 3 days of rehearsal for actors, and then by halfway they had 2, and then it was on set rehearsal. So these shows were being turned around at a ridiculous pace. The fact that they look as good as they do, like John Badham is a really good filmmaker, so he's going to make it look like a movie, which he did. That they're getting anything that looks halfway decent is really impressive. And so when some of these things work, I'm even more impressed, I guess is all I'm saying. The zero production value here at the end of this one, it's still fun and quick and brief, and it's breathing, in my mind, new life into the series. I don't know how you guys felt about this one.
So brief, and it's not anything really. And I appreciate that, actually, because we saw, the last time we did an episode, they're closing down Tim Riley's bar, like those 34 minutes. Yeah. It's like, fuck off with that. You don't need to be kowtowed, saying it right, in 2022. You don't have to kowtow to a structure from another version of someone else's show. You don't. And we're seeing that here now, where it's like, okay, a segment that's like 15 minutes, a segment that's 10 minutes, and then 2 3-minute segments.
And they'll continue that the rest of the season.
Which is exciting. That's exciting for me as a watcher of this show who really was having a hard time getting motivated and excited to watch Night Gallery in the first season.
Good. I feel a little vindicated. Because I was starting to feel like I led you down a dark path that we weren't expecting with how that season went. So
yeah, you had us in Dreams for Sale territory pretty quickly there, and I was just like, oh no, what? I thought this show was supposed to be good. We're in for 2 more seasons of this. Oh no.
Like a fucking nightmare. Like straight up. And it's not your fault. I mean, you didn't make the show. But yeah, like that first season is just like, it feels like a bad dream. Like it does, because like those episodes are so bizarre compared to this. If you showed this episode to someone and then showed them the last episode we watched, you would not get this. Like that person would not tell you it's the same show.
No, they'd say, what did you do to this series? If you showed them in that order, like, this is how bad the series gets. Yeah, but mercifully we got it out of the way. The quality of the series is always fluctuating, as I've said. So, and that's going to continue into season 3. But what we've been experiencing, like you said, Mike, like the Twilight Zone 85 just like slowly dropped. I mean, not slowly, it dropped pretty quickly, but then it precipitously dropped, and it was awful at the end. Same with Tales from the Crypt. At least with Night Gallery, it's kind of the reverse. Like the thing everyone liked about these shows, memories people have of the shows, we're going to find in this season and the next, I think, anyway.
So I guess my question to you then is, with a show like this one, where the first season is bad and it vindicates itself in the second and third season, Rod Serling's involved and hosts the show every time, right? Because like then like that's like that feels bad, man. Like, but like that's the worst thing. We didn't talk about that at all. But like Rod Serling is in the wraparounds of the show that he's taken off of as the showrunner.
Did you happen to notice that there were no Serling introductions to the Blackout sketches?
Right.
Because he refused to do them.
Oh,
boy. Not surprising.
Well, they kind of didn't need them, but...
Right.
No, you don't, but you don't need any of them, honestly. You just show the painting and off we go.
Children's Zoo didn't have it either. Neither did the eponymous episode that our previous show is named for, with Dreams for Sale. It didn't have imagine, if you will. Like, there was none of that. It doesn't need it.
Right, but the motivation here is pettiness.
Oh, well, that's not surprising. I mean, if you hadn't told me that and asked me to guess, I would have said, he probably didn't want to do it because he thought that they were dumb and jokey.
Yeah, but, it's sort of a pattern. I didn't like this, so I'm not going to I'm not going to introduce it. But what's funny is when the show eventually came up for syndication, they repackaged the whole thing. They repackaged the series with a whole other series and pretended it was Night Gallery. And Serling did the introductions for all of those.
Really?
That was the syndication money. Here, it was just like, well, fuck you. I'm not going to introduce your shit. I'm going to introduce my shit and shit that I like.
Shrewd businessman, that one. I mean, you know where to go to get where you need to get. And if you got to do the intros.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying he shouldn't have done that, but I'm saying it just seems kind of petty. At the same time, they should have taken his name off of it. It's no longer his thing. So,
Was for the first season.
Yeah, I mean, but he was the creative control of the show. He was not the showrunner. He was not the producer of the show. He just was a hired hand, and that's no longer the case. He's still a hired hand, but demoted.
Now he's just an actor and the guy who happened to write the scripts for some of the episodes. Hey, and you know what? If the show continues to be the quality of this episode, I'm down with that. I'm good with that. I'm excited for that because I was not excited for everything after what we just saw that first season. Like, just being bluntly honest, like it was as bad as the last season of Tales from the Crypt at its worst last season.
No, that's absolutely incorrect, sir. That's incorrect.
That 34-minute Tim Riley episode is such.
Any episode of Night Gallery. Anyone, even the worst one, is better than the best episode of the final season of Tales from the Crypt.
That one animated one with the pigs was pretty good.
What?
I'm just kidding. What? The animated Tales from the Crypt episode that ended the show with the pigs.
Yeah, the perfect ending. Prefabricated bullshit. Yeah.
Well, hey, I mean, that's the way the end of this last season felt. So this is a show that feels like it's taking place in the 70s. It has the 70s humor. It has that 70s humor, and that last season of the show felt firmly rooted in like 68.
Yeah, it felt firmly rooted in 64. It was the Twilight Zone Part 2. Like, he hadn't thought of anything sort of beyond.
Do they sing for He's a Jolly Good Fellow in this season of the show?
They're going to. In a Rod Serling scripted episode, yes. They are going to sing for He's a Jolly Good Fellow.
Well, then that's the only reason that makes sense, because otherwise there's no way it would show up in this season of the show. No way. Like, that's not the sensibilities of the time.
He's the standard bearer of that song at this point.
I think for a lot of years that song got like 3, 4, 5 times the amount of play just because you couldn't use Happy Birthday and stuff. So you would use that instead because it's like, or I'm a jolly good fellow.
William Wyndham, stop that.
Yeah. Yikes. I'm good. I don't ever. Yep. No. Camptown Ladies would have been a better song. Like, just sing that instead. Yeah.
The Camptown Ladies.
The Camptown Ladies.
All right. On our next episode of Midnight Viewing, we're going to be appraising 4 new paintings. 4 again. Those are Death in the Family, The Merciful, Class of '99, and Witch's Feast. Vincent Price is in one of them.
The boy who predicted earthquakes, by the way, had an amazing painting. We should totally talk about them and mention them. That painting is the best thing I've seen so far in the show. It's weird, man. Yeah. Hauntingly weird. Gorgeous. In like a way I was not expecting. Oh, and also, beautiful as well. Yeah, with the paintings have been good. They're not an overthought. They're not an oversight in this show. They're actually spending time in making these paintings, which is impressive.
Let's shout out to Tom Wright, who did all of the paintings, all of the different styles. They're all incredible. This one, you're right, Chris, in particular, is gorgeous. Evidently, that is his child that he painted into the painting. But like that face in that crystal ball, it's a picture of absolute innocence and loveliness, but there's something so wrong about it. Like and Tom Wright's a genius for that, like conveying the story sometimes in better ways than the dramatic that we're gonna get.
Yeah. Oh no, that stood out to me. It was just haunting.
There was a book out there, The Art of Darkness, I think it was called, that I think the last time I tried to look it up, it's out of print, and then I might have found a really overpriced version of it, but my God, can you imagine having an art book, like one of those big oversized book of just all those Night Gallery paintings?
Let's make it happen, Father Malone.
I know, look, I've been searching this entire time. Like, I can't find a copy for less than $200. Ooh. And I'm like, and I love it, and I know I would treasure it, but I don't have $200 to spend on the Night Gallery paintings right now.
No.
I see them enough just doing the stupid animated commercials. Until then, where can people find you, Chris Stachiw?
cstachiw.com, cstachiw.com. That's my link tree for all the things I work on. I work on a lot of stuff with Mike White. We talk about 70s cops a lot. And then Hobbits, which is, it makes sense. Peter Falk's short.
Hand in hand.
He's short like a hobbit. Can you imagine that Peter Falk playing Bilbo? It would work.
It would work.
Boy.
It would work. Oh.
I'm not one for adventure.
Oh. Give me that universe, please. But that's where you can find me over at cstachiw.com. What about you, Mike White? Where can people find you?
Go ahead. Keep your secrets.
I would so watch that. Like, I want to live in that universe where they made Lord of the Rings in the
Somebody
late
deep
70s.
fake that.
Yes,
yeah.
please.
I would love it. You can always find me over at the projectionboothpodcast.com, which is where I talk about movies, and there's links to all the other stuff that we're doing. There's going to be a link over to viewing here pretty soon, and to a Podcast of Power, our new Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power podcast.
As for me, you can find me over at fathermalone.com. That's a link tree to all of my nonsense. Thank you for joining us here in the Night Gallery, and we'll see you in the next episode.